State of the Union. President Trump gives his annual address to lawmakers and the nation. We have a preview, including what he's expected to say about immigration and life issues. Fight for the unborn. A proposal to help babies who survive abortion is blocked in the Senate. We talked to the pro-life senator who introduced the bill. Historic visit. Pope Francis celebrates Mass in the United Arab Emirates before heading back to Rome. And Happy New Year. We'll tell you why there were prayers and celebrations today in Beijing. On EWTN News Nightly for Tuesday, February 5th, 2019. Tonight, President Donald Trump delivers his second State of the Union address inside the Capitol building. We're told the president will include a pro-life message to Congress. Good evening from Washington, D.C., and thank you for joining us for news from a Catholic perspective. I'm Wyatt Goolsby, in for Lauren Ashburn. Tonight's State of the Union marks the first time President Trump will address a divided Congress. Speaker Nancy Pelosi will sit behind the president as he delivers his address in the Democratic-held House chamber. White House correspondent Mark Irons reports. Good evening, Mark.
Good evening, Wyatt. The White House says the president will call for optimism and unity and use this moment to reset after 2 years of bitter partisanship and deeply personal attacks. He's expected to push for a border wall, and I'm told the president will also talk about the right to life. Will the president speak out against abortion tonight?
The president has been 100% committed to the pro-life community and the pro-life movement, and you can certainly expect that he'll echo the same things that he's talked about and the same types of policies that he's pushed for as president.
The White House says the president will also focus on border security and repeat his call for the wall, a topic that divided Congress and provoked a 35-day partial government shutdown. The address comes as lawmakers actively negotiate how to avoid another shutdown in 10 days. The president has hinted that he may declare a national emergency to get wall funding.
You'll hear the State of the Union, and then you'll see what happens right after the State of the Union, okay?
Special guest of the president will be in attendance tonight, including the family of a Nevada couple killed by an illegal immigrant earlier this month, a survivor of the Tree of Life synagogue shooting in Pittsburgh, and the first prisoner released after the president signed bipartisan criminal justice reform. But hours before his speech, Senator Schumer is already blasting the president.
The state of our union is in need of drastic repair.
President Trump says Schumer is just upset Democrats didn't win Senate control after the midterm elections. But the Senate minority leader is laying out his case to the American people before the speech.
The truth is, the state of the Trump economy is failing America's middle class. The state of the Trump health care system is failing American families.
A similar message will likely come from Stacey Abrams, who lost a tight governor's race in Georgia last year. She'll give the Democrats' response to the president's speech. Stacey Abrams was backed by the nation's largest abortion provider, Planned Parenthood, in her race for governor. The president of Planned Parenthood will be at the president's State of the Union tonight as a guest of Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi. Wyatt?
White House correspondent Mark Irons reporting. Thanks, Mark. In addition to the special guest sitting with the First Lady Melania Trump, there will be several other notable guests tonight. Freshman Senator Republican Rick Scott, the former governor of Florida, invited Andy Pollock. He's the father of Meadow Pollock, one of the 17 victims of the Parkland school shooting. Former Turkish prisoner Pastor Andrew Brunson and his wife will be guests of North Carolina Senator Tom Tillis. Nobel Peace Prize winner and Yazidi human rights activist Nadia Murad will be the guest of Congressman Jeff Fortenberry. Several Democrats are inviting people who symbolize their opposition to the Trump administration's policies, including Congressman Donald McEachin of Virginia. He's bringing one of the plaintiffs challenging the transgender military ban in court. Stay with EWTN News Nightly tonight on social media. Our team will be updating Facebook and Twitter before, during, and after the speech. We'll also be streaming the State of the Union on our Facebook page. We'll have analysis and reaction tomorrow evening. Senator Ben Sasse is forging ahead to fast-track a bill to protect babies who survive abortion, despite a setback. Last night, a Democrat blocked the chamber from passing it by unanimous consent. Capitol Hill correspondent Jason Calvi questioned her today. Good evening, Jason.
Good evening, Wyatt. The bill would require medical professionals to treat babies surviving abortion and rush the child to the hospital. If they don't, the abortion doctors and nurses would face fines and up to 5 years in jail. Sasse, who's sponsoring the bill, says it's very simple.
There are only two sides of the debate on the floor tonight. You're either for babies or you're defending infanticide.
Last night, Republican Ben Sasse of Nebraska asked the Senate to unanimously agree to pass the Born Alive Abortion Survivors Protection Act. But Democrat Patty Murray of Washington objected.
We have laws against infanticide in this country. This is a gross misinterpretation of the actual language of the bill that is being asked to be considered, and therefore I object.
I asked the senator today why she wouldn't support the bill.
Congress, politicians should not get between a woman and her doctor.
All this bill would do is say that if a child survives abortion, it should be treated by medical professionals.
That's
why
not all
oppose
it
that?
says.
That's what the text says in the bill. Why oppose it, Senator?
Infanticide is illegal in this country.
But this bill said they have to
goes
treat those babies who survive abortion. Gianna Jessen, a 41-year-old singer, writer, and pro-life advocate, lived to tell her story.
I survived an abortion, and you can't just do that by yourself. You need Jesus.
The bill would protect survivors like Jessen.
I have a tightness in my chest. I'm a mom, so I am disheartened and I'm absolutely appalled by the debate that we have had in front of us.
Senator Bill Cassidy of Louisiana, a medical doctor, calls the bill's failure mind-blowing.
Have we come to a point in our society where you can commit infanticide and we've normalized infanticide? It is just amazing. I think it troubles even some who are pro-choice.
Senator Sasse is pushing for a roll call vote. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell has warned Democrats if they invent reasons to block the bill, Republicans won't back down. Now, the GOP-controlled House passed the same bill in 2018. Only 6 House Democrats voted for it. Wyatt?
Jason, how have pro-life Democrats reacted to the bill's blockage?
Charlie Camosi is a board member of Democrats for Life. He says the party's rejection of the bill last night might, in his words, kill the party in 2020. But again, we saw Democrats largely oppose the bill in the House, and still they won that chamber in 2018.
Capitol Hill correspondent Jason Calvi reporting. Thanks, Jason. Senator Ben Sasse joins us now from Capitol Hill. Senator Sasse, welcome to our broadcast. The language in your bill simply states medical professionals need to treat babies surviving abortion or risk jail. Why did you propose it now at this time?
Well, this is not a complicated issue, right? I mean, defending the weakest and most vulnerable among us is something that everybody should be able to agree with all day, every day, 365 days a year. But right now, it's obviously been in the news over the course of the last 2 weeks because of what's going on in New York and Virginia. And to be clear, this is not about the penalties. The conversation here is about the basic standard we need to have, which is that a baby that survives an abortion is a baby that's alive, and she's 2 days old, right, or 2 hours old, and the same standard of care that would be applied to any other baby of that stage, that far along in gestation, that kind of care should be given to that baby that survived abortion. These senators, they're people who come to the floor every day, and no matter what the issue is, they say they want to fight for the poorest and the weakest and the most vulnerable among us. We're literally talking about the weakest and the most vulnerable among us. These babies have dignity, and they deserve protection.
So noting all of that, are you surprised then that it didn't receive unanimous consent?
I guess I'm simultaneously shocked and yet also in a way not that surprised because of how warped our culture is right now on these basic issues of fundamental care and love and universal human dignity for these babies. But I am shocked that any senator would go to the floor and oppose a protection for these babies that have been born alive. We're talking about prohibiting infanticide. You can't really do anything more basic and more obvious than that. But there has been a real drift in the pro-abortion industry and the pro-abortion lobby over the last 10 or 15 years, where 15 years ago the rhetoric was regularly that they thought that abortion should be safe and legal, but rare. They still affirmed that they wanted abortion to be rare. Now you see something really different going on. We saw it in Virginia this week, and we saw it in New York the week before. In New York, they lit up the World Trade Center. Governor Cuomo decided to light up the World Trade Center in a pink light to celebrate this sort of pro-death victory that we saw in New York. And think about that weird imagery to light it up in pink. What does pink symbolize? Pink has usually been used to celebrate the survivors of breast cancer, to celebrate an organ that helps feed a little baby. This is a tender, special, intimate thing, and people are celebrating it for the perversity of the opposite of what it means. In Virginia, you saw the governor out there defending infanticide for a couple of days on the radio, and he literally said things like, well, if the baby survives an abortion, then we would try to keep the baby comfortable. The baby could be resuscitated if that's what the mom and the family decided they wanted, and then doctors could have a debate about infanticide. It's nutty stuff, and it's just morally repugnant. And fortunately, I think the vast majority of Americans know that this stuff is beyond the pale, and in the long term, the pro-life position is going to win.
Yeah, so let me ask you then, now that this bill, did not get unanimous consent, where does it go from here? What's the next step?
So I've been fighting for the last 2.5 years to get a roll call vote on the floor of the U.S. Senate on my Born Alive Abortion Survivors Protection Act. And so in the light of the news of the last 2 weeks, there was a chance to just expedite it straight to the floor and pass it by unanimous consent. That's how it should have been passed. But we had a senator from Washington who decided to object to that. And so we'll keep trying to fight to have a regular roll call vote. In the Senate, you can pass things basically 2 different ways. Unanimous consent means 100-0. That's how this should have passed. Or you can have a recorded vote, and then you need 60 votes to pass it. I'm going to fight to get a recorded vote on that. That often takes months of negotiation about what gets to the Senate floor. The Senate floor is the most valuable limited resource in Washington, D.C. When something gets to the floor, it takes 3 days or so of time, and there can only really be one thing happening on the Senate floor at a time. So almost everything that passes the Senate passes by unanimous consent, but the small subset of things that go by recorded vote is the path we'll continue to fight on for this now.
Okay, we'll continue to follow the developments on this bill and all other bills related to the life issue. Senator Ben Sasse, Republican from Nebraska, thanks so much for talking with us today.
Thanks, Wyatt. Good to be with you.
Governor Ralph Northam of Virginia is still weighing whether he can continue in the job amid the fallout over a racist photo on his 1984 medical school yearbook page. Before that photo, Northam sparked national outrage after supporting infanticide and late-term abortion. Presidential candidate Elizabeth Warren is the latest Democrat to say the governor should step down. If Northam resigns, Lieutenant Governor Justin Fairfax, who is also pro-abortion, will take over. Pope Francis concludes his historic visit to the Arabian Peninsula with the first ever papal mass in the birthplace of Islam. During a 40-hour trip, the Holy Father attempted to turn a page in Christian-Muslim relations while ministering to a unique, thriving Catholic community. Cheers erupted as Pope Francis waved at the faithful gathered inside Zayed Sports City Stadium in Abu Dhabi.
Per Gesù invece beati sono I poveri, I miti.
Authorities in the United Arab Emirates say some 180,000 people attended the Mass. The Holy Father preached a message of meekness to a largely poor flock in a country that is home to the world's biggest skyscraper and is known for its opulence and excess.
Chi ha ragione, Gesù o il mondo?
He has a special charisma, which appeals to each one of everybody is actually mesmerized by his appeal for peace and tolerance and whatever you talk about. And his simplicity and humility.
That humility and what is being billed as the largest show of public Christian worship on the Arabian Peninsula touched the Catholics who witnessed it.
We're just overwhelmed by how open this country and how blessed we are to have this opportunity. And for me, I just want for this event to be a successful one and for the holiness to reach each and every one of us here spiritually.
Really, it's a dream to have a Pope in UAE for the first time, and I don't think it's going to be in the near future. So for us, it's I don't know how to describe it, but it's so emotional. First time to see a Pope here. We saw him in Lebanon, we saw him in Europe, but there it's normal, here it's abnormal.
Edward Penton, Rome correspondent for EWTN's National Catholic Register, was in Abu Dhabi and just returned to Rome aboard the papal plane. He joins us with an update.
Yes, this was a very historic trip, Wyatt, the first trip by a Pope to the Arab Peninsula. Left jubilant crowds in Abu Dhabi. They've been expecting this visit and hoping for it for a long time. And the Pope himself was happy with it. He said it was too short but a great experience. And I think it fulfilled very much these two main aims for this trip, which is to reach out to the Muslim world in a very significant way, and also to bolster the large immigrant Catholic population there. On the flight back, he covered a number of issues. He talked about Venezuela, Yemen. He also referred to this major document on Muslim-Catholic dialogue. But he also was asked about the sexual abuse of female religious by priests and bishops. He said it was a problem that he was aware of, and that it's something he was committed to tackling. But he didn't actually answer whether it would be brought up at this summit in Rome in a couple of weeks' time on sexual abuse. Wyatt, back to you in Washington.
Coming up, celebrations today in Beijing and around the world. Millions of people across Asia are ringing in the Lunar New Year. Festivities include parades, decorations, and ceremonial meals. People also flock to temples to light incense and pray for good fortune and health. 2019 is the year of the pig, one of the 12 animals in the Chinese zodiac rotating cycle. Welcome back. I'm Wyatt Goolsby in for Lauren Ashburn. The embattled president of Venezuela is asking Pope Francis to mediate the political turmoil in his country. In a television interview, Nicolas Maduro described his request to the Holy Father.
El Papa sabe, yo soy un practicante de la fe.
Maduro says he is a Christian at the service of Christ and hopes Pope Francis will facilitate talks between his socialist government and the opposition led by Juan Guaido. The U.S., the European Union, and most of Latin America recognize Guaido as the interim president of Venezuela. Christians in North Korea are struggling to maintain their faith hidden amid government crackdowns.
정말 막 밤하늘을 보면서 올려다보면서 손 모아갖고 막 기도하고 그랬어요.
One defector saying she learned how to pray by watching her mother, a Christian who spent time in prison. A pastor in South Korea says the faithful in the North communicate by text messages using a secret language only they can understand. North Korea bans religious freedom and especially considers Christianity a U.S.-led Western threat. Up next, analysis on what the president will say in the State of the Union. Welcome back. I'm Wyatt Goolsby in for Lauren Ashburn. President Trump takes his message of choosing greatness to the American people tonight as he delivers his State of the Union address. Genevieve Wood, Senior Communications Advisor for the Heritage Foundation, joins me now to preview the speech. Genevieve, welcome back. We've heard the president is going to call for unity tonight, as he did in last year's State of the Union. But right now, he's facing even more politically divided situation with the Congress. And even today, the president and Chuck Schumer were spatting on Twitter. Is there any hope that this speech can bring together or be anywhere bipartisan?
Well, we're probably never going to see unity on Twitter, but maybe other places. Look, I think there's very clear that there are Democratic politicians, Nancy Pelosi and others, who are very set in their ways on this. But I think the president has the opportunity tonight to speak to the American people, not just the people that are in the House chamber. And I think that's where you could see some unity, not just in terms of feeling good as Americans, but in terms of moving ahead on some of these policies like immigration and others, where I don't think the American people are as hardened in their positions as many of the people in Washington are.
As you know, Democrats are already criticizing the president even ahead of the speech itself. White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders says the president will, though, highlight his achievements and look for to sort of downplay all of the discord. What kind of achievements do you think he will highlight, and what do you think he needs to do better to improve?
Sure. Well, number one, I think what he's going to highlight is the economy, because even I think his toughest critics have a hard time denying the fact that where unemployment is today, not just for the public in general, but I mean, it's the lowest unemployment rate for women in over 65 years. For African Americans, for Latinos, the numbers are very, very good. So even though he has some harsh critics, it's tough to look at the economy and the job market and say bad things are happening. So I think you're going to see him rightfully do a victory lap on that. But there's a whole list, I mean, whether it's trade with China, whether it's infrastructure, healthcare is something that, frankly, Republicans, even when they were controlled, did not get across the finish line in terms of repealing Obamacare. There's a lot of work to be done. So I think there's a number of issues he's got to hit on.
One of the other big issues is that President Trump talked about throughout his campaign is immigration. And so what do you think we'll hear from him tonight on that? And especially we have this ongoing negotiations with regards to border security.
Yeah. Well, look, border security, both sides have rightly said, is more than just one thing. It's more than just a wall, but it's also more than just drones, and it's more than just putting people on the border. It's all of those things. I mean, true immigration reform would talk about the border, but it would also talk about interior enforcement. It would talk about reforming our asylum laws. There's a lot to discuss there. I hope what the president does is says, look, there's not a one-size-fits-all to fixing this problem. And yes, I want the wall, and yes, Chuck Schumer has voted for that wall. He's sitting out there tonight. Nancy Pelosi and others in that room have been supportive in the past. Let's get on board, both with what you want, but also what I want, because truly, border security and immigration reform involves a number of components, not just one.
Another big issue for our audience is the respect for life, and his position has surprised many on that. Is this an opportunity for him to distinguish that aspect about his administration and say that he's unequivocally pro-life?
I think what we saw happen in New York about a week ago, what we saw happen in the debate in Virginia this past week, has really brought this issue again to a national attention. The president, before it wasn't sure it was going to be in the remarks, I expect him to say something tonight about the sanctity of life, the dignity of every human life, and the fact that at the state level we're seeing such atrocities in places like Virginia and New York attacking human dignity and unborn children. And frankly, when we're talking about children in the third trimester, that is something, whether you're Republican, Democrat, conservative, liberal, the vast majority of Americans are opposed to what's happened in New York and to what's been proposed in Virginia.
So many important issues, including that last one. We'll be following it, as well as you, Genevieve Wood, Senior Communications Advisor for the Heritage Foundation. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Wyatt.
And before we go, one more reminder to tune into our coverage of the State of the Union. We will stream the speech live on our Facebook page and have analysis before and after. Tune in tomorrow as well for reaction to the President's second State of the Union address. And with that, we thank you for watching tonight. For the entire EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Wyatt Goolsby. We'll see you tomorrow with more news from a Catholic perspective. Good night, and God bless.